Okay, let's have a look at the idea of, well, I guess using images to trace. Okay, so first of all, I just want to give you an example. This is an image that I used for a neuron or a nerve cell recently, one of my biology tutorials, and my drawing skills are not particularly good. So the best way for me to do that was to find an illustration which represented a neuron like this, and then I basically traced it in advance and use that trace as a freehand drawing, which kind of fitted neatly into how I present my work, I suppose. And I kind of wanted just to give you an illustration of that. So if I just drag you down slightly, I was sort of trying to imagine what it would be like if I was a geography teacher, and I found this image online. It looked pretty useful to me, and I thought, right, okay, I don't want to use the image directly because I kind of want to construct it somehow, and I want it to be my drawing. But equally, I think it would be really nice to have something of this sort of detail and accuracy for my students to sort of take note of. So I want to show you how you do that. So here you see, for example, I've got a layer, which is this image. I'll just get rid of my neuron image before. And what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to add a layer. And you see now my new layer here is above the layer 4, which is my riverbed image. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to call this my trace, which I'm definitely going to spell correctly because otherwise it looks really silly. So here's my trace. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to choose some colors to try and produce this illustration. Okay, and I know it's freehand. It's not going to be perfect. I may well not have the perfect colors, but I'm going to try somehow to see if I can trace this. So all I'm going to do is I'm on the layer above the image, and I'm going to start tracing the dominant features of this river cross section. Okay, so I'm tracing like this. It's not going to be perfect. It's hand drawn, but hey, you know what? It's going to look pretty cool once it's done. Now I'm going like that just to make sure it's completely sealed. Okay, so now if I get rid of my image illustration, you see now I have that as the structure, which is now on my canvas. I'll put this back in. What I'm going to quickly do now is I'm now going to fill that there. So if I get rid of my image, see now I've got that structure in place. So I'm going to go into, let me choose a blue, let me choose something like that. And I'm going to choose a blue. Let me get rid of my fill. I want a darker blue than that. I want something quite dark. Okay, so I'm going to choose my blue that comes, undo that. That comes up all the way from here and comes all the way to that point there. Now, I'm also at this point going to make sure that I can draw my kind of sediment layer in there, so that's now nicely sealed. Perhaps what I'm going to do with that, I'm also going to fill that at that point. Oops, that's not going to work because I've obviously not quite closed off my illustration, so I'm going to have that like this, fill that like this. It's still not working. You get the idea. That's what I'm trying to do here. So I'll figure that out in a second, but now if I close my image, I've now got what is developing a nice little a nice looking sort of river cross section. So what I want to do here is I want to finish off this, so I wasn't completing that there. And now I want to go to my fill. There's my fill like that. Maybe I want to go to the blue here, fill like this. So I'm building up an image here which is pretty usable. If I bring back in here, you can see the things I haven't drawn yet. So I want to go to some greens, just give a bit of kind of life on the bank here. It doesn't need to be too spectacular. Go to some kind of, there seem to be some kind of orangey yellowy colours in there. Just go to that, make that kind of like wildlife, the old flora over here. Okay, so I'll just put that in here a little bit. Go back to my green. And what I've got now is I've got a nice base illustration of what my river cross section could look like. Now, I'm not suggesting for a second that this is perfect, or that you couldn't do it a million times better than me. I'm sure you could. I'm sure most people could. The point I'm just trying to make really is you've got a technique there that allows you to develop a nice sort of illustration which could be like really relevant to emphasize certain things. Now, again, if we go back to the image here, there could have been other things in here that I want to sort of include. Do I want to include this sky background? I've got my blue fill in here. I know there were certain labels and things under here, so I could go like this, for example, and look at the details that I don't have. So I might want to go to something like a sort of a dark kind of brown color and start making some little kind of pebble design, this kind of thing. Doesn't need to be anything spectacular. I'm just trying to get my point across. Okay, so if I again remove this, we're starting to get towards that kind of illustration that we had before. So the final thing I'd sort of say on this that you might just want to be aware of is one of the ways you could do this. Let me say, let's assume I do exactly the same illustration. Let's actually bring this back. Let's actually bring my illustration down here. That's not the one I want to bring down. I want to bring down this one. So let's assume we've got this down here for a second, okay? Now what I could do from this point, I could do basically what I did before, I could create a kind of, I'm going to do this super quick, okay? I could create this kind of cross-sectional area here, make sure it's sealed, okay? Make sure it's sealed. Did you guys realize the mistake I made? I didn't put a layer in, did I? So let me just put a layer in above there. So let me do that again. So I could make my kind of like land feature here, as it were. So I can make this like this. Make sure that's sealed. Maybe I fill that object up like that. Okay. Maybe I want to do my grass. Maybe I want to do my grass up there, as we saw before, green and yellow stuff. Maybe I want to make it like that. And at that point, maybe once this thing has gone, maybe that's kind of like my first layer. What I could do now, if I wanted to, is I could have a second layer of this, and the second layer of this now, I'm on the second layer. I go to my sort of my dark blue color, like that. And I go to my kind of my light yellow sandy color like this. Okay, and maybe I fill that in like that. Not going to work. Whoops. I keep having problems with that one, don't I? Let me make sure that's completely sealed off. Not going to work again. So anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that if you get rid of this a second, what you could have available, I mean, I haven't done a brilliant version of it, is you could have nothing available here. And you could say, here's my image. This is a cross-section of a river. And on this river, the water is this height. And actually, while I'm doing this, I also want to fill in my... I'm so bad at this. I also want to, maybe I want to fill in my riverbed this way. It's going to do the same, isn't it? Wow. Having an absolute nightmare. But the point I'm trying to make is, and hopefully it can come across to you, is that what you've got here is you can build this up in layers, okay? So let's say that I had the next layer, and maybe the next layer was simply me using, let's choose a different tool brush. Let's choose this. Maybe the next layer is just with me kind of like filling up the riverbank in that way. I don't think it's a great example, but you get the idea. I could start with nothing. I could introduce my cross section. I could introduce my additional features, and I could introduce my water, for example. So if it's a nice way, there's some possibilities there in terms of what you might want to do.